Well, we've talked about at length for a while in the lead up to the launch for Nintendo Switch 2 how Nintendo's strategy for this particular console launch was to truly flood the market with enough stock to try to meet day one demand and be able to essentially keep up with enough restock waves. That was their plan on how they were going to combat scalping. And while that stuff sounds nice on paper when you're hearing it from President Shintaro Furukawa, and he's assuring investors that Nintendo has a plan to fight hardware scalping and the resale market, because obviously for Nintendo, they don't want these things in the hands of resellers. They want them in the hands of gamers who are going to buy software, which is really where they make most of their profit. So selling a ton of units and having them sit in people's warehouses or just their own houses until they ship them out really is not beneficial for Nintendo. And they were pretty clear about how they were handling the scalping situation. But until we saw proof in what they were saying, it didn't seem extremely believable, because if you're like me and you remember very well just how hard it was to find a PS5 and Xbox Series X shortly after those consoles launched. Granted, 2020 pandemic time, it was an interesting thing going on with the chip shortage globally. But then you even go past that to prior console launches like the Nintendo Switch and the Wii. Before that, I remember standing outside of a Toys R Us with my mom at 6 a.m. to try to get one of their restocks, and we were 24th in line. There was only 26 available for purchase, so barely made the cut. And this was well at 9 months, maybe a year after the Wii had launched. So typically when there is a new hot item that people want, it is literally scalper city for the foreseeable future, and all the listings online are typically double, sometimes triple price that you see on these $400-500 items. You see them go over $1,000 or $1,200. And fortunately, this time around, while restocks are not going to be there all the time, and there will be periods that this thing is hard to find, maybe don't turn to the scalper market at all, because it seems like Nintendo has some pretty good plans in place to keep this console restocked. And currently, scalpers are actually getting crushed with this thing. So we'll break down all this info, but before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick this off right over at VGC, where you can see some of the headlines on the kind of damage that Nintendo is doing currently, where Nintendo Switch 2 sells 3.5 million in 4 days, likely to be the biggest console launch ever. Switch 2 is officially the fastest selling Nintendo system ever. And in case if you're unfamiliar, while it's kind of a little bit unclear on the timeline of how many units were sold in like the first 24 hours of a console launch, Nintendo Switch 2 is comfortably the most popular console launch in history. Nintendo has pulled that off, and a lot of that was tied to basically this stock plan that they had, where they started production a lot earlier than they needed to. They also stockpiled it for quite a while, which did lead to a lot of the leaks of the system that we saw ahead of time, because Nintendo started ramping up production well in advance of when they would need it. But we now have not only those sales figures of 3.5 million total that was confirmed by Nintendo itself, but also we're getting like region specific. We have basically right at 1 million just from retailers over in Japan, not counting the My Nintendo Store sales. Then we also have the US region now getting some official numbers. The Nintendo Switch 2 set a new all-time launch week unit sales record for video game hardware in the US, with over 1.1 million units sold during the week ending June 7th, 2025. Excludes sales from the My Nintendo Store, so also just retailers. The record was previously held by PlayStation 4. This comes to us from Matt Piscatella over at Circana, formerly known as NPD. And then you have kind of some restock talk going on online. Shout outs to Nintendo Prime. Restocks continue to sell out fairly quickly at places that had sellouts for launch. And you have the Switch 2 at my local Costco. Basically the time that they were stocked at 4:01 p.m. and then what it's looking like after at 5:08 p.m. Basically all of those card holders you would take to a register to purchase the Switch 2 just gone and wiped out. So doesn't last long in this case, but we do also have these kind of interviews going down where Nintendo thinks it can meet Switch 2 demand in the US through 2025. Platform holder says a steady supply of Switch consoles is on the way to retailers, and we have already seen one retailer like Best Buy do a full-on restock that has already since sold through. But you have some really reassuring comments from Mr. Doug Bowser here. So speaking on CBS Mornings, Nintendo of America President Doug Bowser said the company will have a steady supply of Switch consoles making their way to retailers over the coming months. We have a steady supply of manufacturing that will be coming in, and we believe we'll be able to meet that demand all the way through the summer, through Father's Day, and then into the holiday period also. Now, obviously, when you talk about the holiday period, that is when scalping could kind of ramp up, and maybe we see a little bit more of an issue with the price point of this console. But as it stands right now, when you factor in fees and things that scalpers have to pay, they are absolutely getting crushed online. So just to kind of give you guys a look at some completed auctions over at eBay, you do have Nintendo Switch 2 Mario Kart World bundle, a bid that closed out at $705. Now, $649 for just the base console. Just for some fun math, it's basically about 13% is my understanding, or roughly maybe a little bit higher than that, of an eBay fee for an electronic in this particular category. So if we take the $649 and then you're going to actually do the 13%, that's 84 off the top of the $649. So you're at $564 is the net profit take home, and that's, you know, they're doing the delivery included in that price. So they're actually paying shipping. Let's throw in another 15-20 bucks on that cost. They're essentially coming out maybe, you know, a little under 100 ahead if they got this for $450, but then you factor in taxes. I mean, you're really not talking about more than a $50 profit off of this console, if that. A lot of these, some of them going a little bit lower, $635. Of course, this was for the Mario Kart World bundle. So literally almost breaking even on that. $664 in this Switch 2 only console, not the bundle. $690 for a bundle. This is in stark contrast to what we normally see in a new console launch window, where this could have easily been 1,000 plus for people wanting to buy a Nintendo Switch 2 if Nintendo did not flood the market with the stock that they did. Now scalpers going through extra work to list these online, ship them out, and they're legitimately walking away with 25, 50, 75 bucks in some case, but not a profitable item, not a double or triple your money item like we've seen in years past. And really the question is going to become at this point is, what does the holiday season look like? Does Nintendo hold a direct in the month of June and reveal some big banger first party titles that drive that many more Switch users who are kind of holding out on the sidelines to see if there's some must play game? Because obviously Mario Kart World is not going to be the big seller title for everyone. While that's a huge chunk of the Nintendo fan base, there are also those that want a full-fledged single player experience, and maybe it's not even Donkey Kong Bonanza for them, but they're needing something else to really push them over the edge to go get that console. That could happen, but if Doug Bowser's comments are to be believed, and Furukawa's comments about how they were planning to stock this thing end up reigning true for the long term, I do think that we're looking at a situation where scalpers have lost this battle. That's great news for consumers at the end of the day. It's going to be hard to turn a profit on it. Hopefully that remains the case through the holiday season, where it really becomes a high demand item once again. And then just to kind of throw in some restock tips, if you are somebody who is still on the hunt for this thing, go follow Jake Randall over on X, one of the best accounts you can follow to stay up to date with all of the Switch 2 restock news and things like that. And also there's a number of different accounts that he shouts out. It's worth it at this point. Turn on those notifications. Just make sure you have all notifications on. Have them on your smartphone, so wherever you're at, whenever a Best Buy restock happens, oftentimes it's shouted out ahead of time from accounts like Jake Randall and a circle of accounts that he's associated with or knows. So you see these retweets come out where, hey, it turns out Best Buy's going to have a restock today. You get a little bit of a heads up compared to the competition, and you have that couple hour window, you know, because that's what it seems like this time, is that while the demand is there, the stock is so plentiful that it's not like those PS5 restocks that I remember seeing where they're in the cart and then all of a sudden the website crashes, nobody can get their purchase to go through, and you find out like 20 to 100 people got the console in total, as opposed to, in this case, hundreds and thousands of people getting the consoles at successful retail restocks and drops. So this is going to be something that I think that multiple retailers are going to be getting pretty big waves of restock soon. So if you are on the hunt and you want to get a console and you don't want to spend any additional money towards scalping, on this thing, because I don't think you need to. The 649, 670 price points we're seeing these things go for really just don't pay that, because I think that we're going to be in a situation where Nintendo is providing adequate stock. And you can see some people have quite honestly overpaid $670 on a bidding war, plus the shipping, you know, almost $800 console. Like, you don't need to do that in this environment. It does seem like Nintendo, if you can hold out just a little bit, has pretty much successfully sourced this console to meet a certain level of market demand. They're never going to fully satisfy everybody that wants to early adopt this thing, but in general, we are in a much better environment to pick up a Nintendo Switch 2 at or around launch than in any console in recent memory, and that's definitely a win for consumers and a loss for scalpers at the end of the day. So let me know in the comments down below how you're enjoying your Nintendo Switch 2 if you already have one. Are you somebody who's maybe still on the hunt, and are you trying to pick one up at retail right now, and what's your experience been with that? Have you been successful on any restock waves or heard of any additional waves that are around the corner? And if you're somebody who's on the sidelines waiting for that big game you have to have for Switch 2 before you go pick it up, what kind of game would push you over the edge and make you go walk into a store and try to find one of these things? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.